reform agenda.
Well, that's right, Ilan. Joining us now to discuss all of that, Parthasarthy Shome, Director of ICRIA, and Ramaswamy, Editor of the Tughlaq. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. Mr. Shome, let me start by asking you, does this, in a sense, pave the way for further reforms at the centre? After all, UPA-1 had the left parties curbing their decision-making, but the UPA-2 is seeing a policy paralysis and perhaps at its weakest due to all of the allegations of corruption. But now that it's gotten a 3-2 win, do you actually see this policy paralysis ebbing?
I think it does give them a better handle. I think the mandate is very clearly on the one hand against what had become a bit of an or quite a bit really of an autocracy in West Bengal, and in Tamil Nadu what became increasingly apparent of huge amounts of leakages from the system and delivery and expenditure management issues. And it's a clear mandate from the system, and that is the magic of our country, that democracy is based on very, very right from the grassroots can really drive governments out. So for one thing, it's a cue. In West Bengal, Congress will be in coalition, even though a kind of junior partner, but certainly it can push its agenda if it is serious about it. And in Tamil Nadu, it is very clear what to stay away from, and that otherwise Congress itself may not be able to pull it off in the next general elections, for that matter. And in Assam, where the work that they've done is accepted to be good, they've come back even more strongly. So I think that this does give the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister much greater handles, and were they sort of serious in terms of practicality to be able to deliver on these matters. So there couldn't have been a clearer mandate in an election which is an assembly election in a few number of states, but very important states. So let us see what at the center this implies in terms of governance. At least I'm sure that is something all of us are rooting for.
Indeed, a lot of implications of this verdict. Ramaswamy, we could come to you. Now that Jayalalitha has won decisively, that too, what kind of an impact on the 2G investigations can be envisaged? She has been, of course, one of the most vocal critics.
I think the agencies will be more emboldened now than they were earlier to really go at it. They have been taking hesitant steps so far. Now I think because of the mood of the people is known, and that will give them some courage to do the right thing.
Right, sir. So the mood of the people is known, but what about the mood of the politicians? At this stage, can we completely rule out an alliance with the Congress, or does that possibility still exist?
Well, as far as the state government is concerned, Jayalalitha has a majority on her own, and naturally she will form her own government. That has been the practice here. Every time there has been, both the ADMK and DMK have been contesting elections with alliances, but whenever they win, if they have the majority, they form the government on their own. Last time, in spite of not having a majority, the DMK did not admit others into the government. It was a minority government supported from outside by other parties. But Jayalalitha is not in that position. She has a majority on her own. As far as her relationship with the Congress goes, it is for the Congress to decide. She had made an offer much earlier of support to the Congress at the centre. Now, if the Congress wants to continue with the DMK, even after what has happened now, it would only mean that they have a share in the loot and are not able to take the right action. If the Congress wants to escape that kind of odium, they have to ditch the DMK. The DMK will stick like a leopard to the Congress. They will not leave the Congress easily because they have to have some protection. Being in the central government is a great protection for them against all kinds of cases.
So you're saying the DMK will stick to the Congress, but Mr. Shome, let me talk economics now. One of the key results of this election is that Asim Dasgupta, the long-serving finance minister of West Bengal, has been bested by Amit Mitra, even as his party has lost. What does his fall really mean for the implementation of the goods and services tax? After all, he was a moving force as the chairman of the Empowered Committee of State Finance Ministers on GST.
My answer is that Dr. Ashim Das Gupta was a very adroit and clever leader of the state finance ministers in the MPAD committee and took the whole process forward. At the same time, because it is a very technical matter and the finance ministers have by and large kept it at a very technical level, that it will not suffer just because of that change. And I can see whether it is Amit Mitra, provided he comes in as finance minister of West Bengal, or Sushil Modi, or Gujarat finance minister, or Tamil Nadu finance minister, or any finance minister, I think with the leadership quality, they will take it forward, because the issues are quite technical, and it will. And I think Ashim Das Gupta has established a kind of pattern of how to go about it. I don't think that per se is going to put back the tax and taking it forward in any way.
Well, that's the view coming in from the finance ministry, and that's what Kaushik Basu has also just told us. But Mr. Shome, we now have the TMC in West Bengal, the AIADMK in Tamil Nadu. Not much is known on what sort of stance the two parties have on GST. What do you actually expect them to do, not just on GST, but also in terms of the other crucial reforms that are pending?
Let me take West Bengal first. West Bengal, the current government will be looking for reducing distortions in the tax system. They will be looking for, or will have to, given the overall fiscal, dire fiscal situation of West Bengal, looking into the fiscal deficit issue, the build-up of public debt in terms of state GDP and so on. They will be looking for tax reform, but that tax reform vehicle and instrument today at the state level is the GST. So further, if we know who the next finance minister is going to be, or surmise, if Amit Mitra, with his very deep experience over several years looking into tax and non-tax aspects and industry aspects, will know that they have to come to a very good and acceptable tax structure as soon as possible, that is neutral and growth oriented. So I believe that they will move forward, whether they mentioned it in the manifesto or not, because that if they mentioned it in the manifesto, that could have been misinterpreted. But my strong belief is that they will put in the support for a GST. In terms of Tamil Nadu, also I believe that it is not a matter of whether AIADMK is now coming in and replacing DMK, but being rather kind of adroit in the technical analysis and issues, the way they kind of test them out. Their focus has always been whether Tamil Nadu is getting benefit out of a tax reform. In other words, are they getting compensation from the center? Is the division of rates and base of any proposed GST helping Tamil Nadu in terms of what products and services they export and what products and services they import, and therefore what kind of revenue they will be getting out of this tax? So these are the types of issues on which they have based their position, rather than any purely political or sort of purely essentially non-economic aspects of the tax. But we'll have to wait and see, because after all AIADMK is not a part of the central government admixture. So we will have to see what happens in the case of Tamil Nadu.
Thanks very much, Parthasarthy, Shome and Cho Ramaswamy there, for taking us through the implications of the change that